Here in Britain, the Liberal Democrats have had a difficult time over the last 4 years, and their prospects of securing power again in a coalition look bleak. Reporter Afzal Ahmed asks, will they be able to avoid relegation and throwing out of government altogether?
The Liberal Democrats Party conference began in Glasgow over the weekend, with party leader Nick Clegg warning that they were in for the fight of their lives in next year's general election. Clegg's public admittance comes on the back of a YouGov poll this year, where support for the Lib Dems lie at a record low of 6%. This compared to 23% in 2010. The party's loss in support owes to the spending cuts and austerity measures that were introduced in conjunction with the coalition partner, the Conservative Party. The first such setback was on the U-turn on university tuition fees after the pre-election promise of opposing them. At the time, they said that they were unable to carry out their pledge as they didn't win the election and didn't have the backing from either of the two other leading parties.
Mr. Speaker, the government agrees.
This line illustrates the role they've had in the last 4 years, a position of compromise and being unable to substantiate their worth as a coalition partner. Things got to a climax at the Tory party conference last week, when the Tories announced that they will repeal and scrap the Human Rights Act. The Lib Dems have vigorously opposed this, and it seems it is a red line that they would not cross. For decades, the Lib Dems and their predecessors were the safety valve of British party politics. They would typically secure the support of about a fifth of the electorate. When the Tories or Labour wandered too far from the ground, the Lib Dems would begin to eat into their voting base. It seems now that instead of securing a comfortable third place in the Premier League of politics, mid-table players such as the Green Party, UKIP and even the SNP may relegate them to something lower. Afzal Ahmed, The Report, Islam Channel.
Well, with me in the studio to discuss this is Councillor Tahir Maher, Vice Chair of the South Central Region of the Liberal Democrats. And on Skype we have John Rentoul, Chief Political Commentator from The Independent on Sunday. Let me start with you, Councillor. I mean, the Liberal Democrats seem to be attacking the Conservatives very strongly in a lot of their speeches from the podium in Glasgow. I mean, is it possible they could ever go back into coalition with the Conservatives after this?
Assalamu alaikum, first of all. I think when we went into coalition with the Conservatives, and personally I was one of the people who didn't want to go with them, really we did it because the economic situation of the country at that time, and we had no choice. We felt, if you listen to the governor of the Bank of England, who said prior to the election that anybody who wins the election could be out of government for 30 years or in the doldrums. So we knew that, but we felt it was the right thing to do. And they drew up an agreement which I thought was very mature and professional. And they've been working to that, and to a large extent they've delivered to it. We are two different parties at the end of the day, and we do have differences. We always knew towards this time, towards this part of the parliament, there will be a lot of issues about us and them, and there will always be issues with the Tories on Europe, and we will have to address these as we go on. But the core point at the end of the day was to reduce the deficit. They were committed to do that. We were committed to do that. It was difficult to work with Labour because their approach was very different, especially after the Lib-Lab Pact, and they had very different ideas. And also, they were the one who got us into this mess that we all started with. So I think it was very pragmatic, and I don't see why we can't necessarily take that pragmatic approach again.
Well, John Rentoul, I mean, what's your view? Can the Liberal Democrats ever expect to be in power again? So many of their supporters feel they were betrayed, and now, anyway, Labour Party now seems to be much stronger than the Conservatives. Well, not much stronger, but ahead of them anyway.
Oh, no. The opinion polls are suggesting that the Conservatives and Labour are level pegging. I mean, the thing is that Liberal Democrats will only get into power by accident, in a sense. If Labour and the Conservatives are roughly equal in terms of number of seats in the House of Commons, then the Liberal Democrats have a chance of forming another coalition. So they're at the mercy of events and of what the other parties do.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's not clear there'll be the third party. The third party could either be UKIP or even the Scottish Nationalists, if the Labour vote in Scotland swings to the Nationalists.
I think that, no, I don't think the SNP are going to overtake the Liberal Democrats in the number of seats. I think the Liberal Democrats will hold on to maybe 25, 30 seats. I don't think UKIP are going to win that many seats, but the UKIP may well win more votes than the Liberal Democrats, and that would certainly put the cat among the pigeons.
And do you think the Labour would be open to a coalition with the Lib Dems? I suppose they'll have to be if the maths push that way.
Absolutely, and I think for the Liberal Democrat grassroots, they would feel, most of them would feel a lot happier with the Labour Party, and Labour would be ready to do that. Absolutely. The thing to remember, though, about the next election is that the Liberal Democrats won't have a choice as to which party they can put into power. It's very unlikely. There are very, very few scenarios where they could actually choose to put either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party in power. I mean, even in 2010, we saw the idea of a Labour coalition with the Lib Dems involved a rainbow coalition of Northern Irish MPs and Green MPs and SNP, possibly Plaid Cymru. It wasn't really possible. The only option they had last time was with the Conservatives.
Well, Councillor, coming back to you, I mean, how do you feel about the Tory line on Human Rights Act, abolishing it possibly, and also the referendum on Europe? I mean, the Lib Dems have been very careful not to come out in favour of a referendum on Europe.
Well, just taking the Human Rights Act first, I think David Cameron, he's quoted as saying people are frustrated with this and this is being used as an excuse.
Well, do you agree with that?
No, I don't, because I agree with our President Tim, who said the other day, this will impact our freedom of speech, our privacy, our standing within Europe. Because if you follow what Chris Grayling wants to do and veto any judgments coming out of the European Court of Human Rights, it actually also starts to look at our qualification in EU. It has other impact on things like the Good Friday Agreement and also the impact of the human rights legislation on our armed forces abroad. So I don't think it's good for us as citizens. I don't think it's good for us, quite frankly, as Muslims. So I don't agree with that. In terms of the referendum, we're in Europe and we are part of Europe. I don't see that, we have the largest economic bloc in the world. Why would we want to come out of it? People have said, let's follow the Norway approach or something like this. Norway has to still adhere to 80% of the laws that are passed. They have no say in them. They still pay a huge amount of money to have the ability to trade in Europe, whereas we are part of it. We are in the center of it. Why would we give that up to do what?
Let me just give the final word, if I may, to John Rentoul. We're running out of time. I mean, there has been some muttering in the Glasgow Lib Dem conference about Nick Clegg's leadership. Do you think he is absolutely safe until the election?
Oh, yes, I think he is safe. But there's been no question that what's been going on in Glasgow over the weekend and today has been a beauty contest of people who want to succeed him. Danny Alexander has admitted that he would like to be leader one day. Norman Lamb, who people have not heard of generally, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, some of us Westminster journalists know who he is. He's a minister in the government, but he's not a household name. He's expressed some interest in being leader. And Tim Farron today got a standing ovation. He's very popular with the grassroots, and he must be the favourite to succeed Nick Clegg. But Clegg will lead them into the election.
Well, on that note, we'll have to end. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have now for this on this episode of The Report. So I want to thank all my guests on today's show. Thank you at home for watching. And do remember that you can keep up with us on Twitter by following @IslamChannel and @IslamChannelCA, and tweet us by using #TheReport. We're back tomorrow evening at the same time. But for now, we'll leave you with some footage from Turkey as Kurds in the southeastern province of Cizre continue to protest against IS advances in Kobani. Until tomorrow, good night.